Chapter 325, Rings and Eternity Band's Steep Price. With confident strides, Isald went ahead of her father and stood in the midst of the elders. If you choose Michael, you're just selecting one exceptional dragon amongst the many, but I'm not just a dragon. I'm a mother of dragons. Her eyes gleamed, and several portals appeared all around the hall. Several dragon heads came out from the portals. None roared, but their presence alone was suffocating. When Luther's head appeared, the elders felt overwhelmed. What are you?" one of the elders asked. "I told you I'm the mother of dragons. I promise to listen to all of you, and I shall ensure this family, our family, grows exponentially," Isald said firmly. There was silence. The elders looked at each other. "You have an eye for talent, Arthur," one of them, who had not spoken since, said. "Since you adopted her, I trust you can vouch for her loyalty to the family." "I can," Arthur replied, glancing at his daughter. "With all my heart." He smiled, a bit proud. "Very well." A short moment later, the door closed as Arthur stepped out with Isald. She flicked her hair back, leaving the hall with poise. "I really haven't understood your ability. Do you truly have all those dragons?" her father asked. "I do and I don't. What I showed the elders were the overminds of my dragons. They're all eggs currently," she replied. Arthur paused. "So you deceived the elders?" "I did not," Isald laughed, drawing a chuckle from her dad. He knew what he trained, and this was it. A woman who had power and knew how to use it. Her confidence made him smirk. Pairing her up with Godfrey produced a great result. The next morning, Godfrey walked into one of Manhattan's best jewelry stores. There were jewelry pieces of all kinds here, and he wanted the best. After defeating the unknown king, he unlocked 30,000 knights. Together with the 20,000 he had unlocked, he had 50,000 knights. They were all king tiers that rose to throne tier as he assumed the throne. Unlike his noble knights, who he couldn't buff, he could actually buff his main army using his authority as a king. They would all become saint tier under his king buff. Once he became emperor, his buff as an emperor might be double or triple this, but this was good for now. The army was currently on an expedition in Patan. There were lots of beasts for his generals to fight and grow stronger. He could already feel Solstice and Dirge's rapid growth. The Crimson Touty soldiers were his hidden cards as they grew endlessly just by devouring their kills. Patan was the perfect place for them to grind towards becoming an army of paragons. The alchemists had also informed him that the knights summoned by his noble knights were their special units, different from the 50,000 under his command. Mountain's heavy infantry, Ballista's bowmasters were both special units. As the noble knights grew stronger, they would be able to summon the stronger versions of their units until they got to the tier where they would be able to summon their units at their apex. This was. Godfrey shook his head and tousled his hair. "I'm here to get Isald a ring. I drifted off with my thoughts," he muttered softly. He went straight to a show glass display case with an array of rings in open boxes. "Good day, sir. What would you like to buy?" the saleswoman asked amicably, but when Godfrey lifted his head to face her, she flinched. His eyes. She gulped. Lots of people loved using Echo to switch their eyes for that of their summon, but this one frightened her. "What would this cost?" Godfrey pointed at a beautiful diamond ring. It was placed in its own glass box. Of course, Isald deserved something special. The saleswoman's eyes widened when she saw what he pointed at. She had been pondering why Godfrey looked familiar, but when he pointed at that ring, her eyes widened. Godfrey had sized the ring with his eyes. It would fit Isald just fine. It had both eternity bands and rings for both male and female, a complete set. Sir." The saleswoman had a troubled expression as people in the place were looking at Godfrey and whispering. "What is it?" Godfrey asked. Then he looked down at the price. "At least a Paragon tier dragon core." His eyes widened. No wonder the saleswoman had that expression. This ring is incredibly special. There's only one in the entire world, and it was made by the heart god, a master craftsman, and this is his latest craft. You're not the only one who has come for the ring. People have offered hundreds of millions for it. Please, choose something else. I'm sure she'll like it. The saleswoman whispered to Godfrey. She couldn't just embarrass a man clearly in love with his girl. Godfrey sighed. I see. Want to kill a dragon? A man threw his arms around Godfrey's neck. I could hook you up. The Gate Defenders Guild wants to clear a red gate on the island of the Statue of Liberty. If you have enough money, you could buy it off them. Many people are in line to snatch it, but I know a man. I can. Status of Liberty, you say? Godfrey's eyes gleamed. Some distance away from the building, 3 golden portals appeared. Solstice, a menace who had been rampaging through monster dens like the trouble he was before becoming a knight, emerged. He wasn't willing to be forgotten. He had risen to tier 26. He activated his humanoid dragon state and his height increased. He grew a tail. His armor became like scales. Claws came out of his hands and feet. Horns grew out of his head and vast leathery wings sprouted from his back. His tier rose from 26 to 28. He was the only knight who could even rise by 3 once his highest state was activated. That made him a nightmare of a chief general. As if that wasn't enough, Tempest and Toria in their blackout states emerged from their portals. Statue of Liberty, now fetch me that dragon's core. Godfrey's voice rang in their heads and all 3 of them shot into the sky, leaving behind stunned people. Is that? Tyla's eyes widened as she watched the knights. Tempest and Toria were hard to ignore in the dark skis. At the island, a lot of Gate Defenders Guild members moved about. There were almost 40 people outside the gate. About half of them were meant to take the spoils as they progressed in the dungeon. They had scouted this red gate. This was a progenitor-tier dragon cave dungeon. There were lots of gold and treasures inside, and they would be sold at a higher price because gold from those worlds were purer due to their mana density. Purchasing the rights to this dungeon was no small feat. Luckily, Arthur Pendragon decided to hand it over to them and not the Justice Guild. Lotus stood outside the bus that drove the team over, looking at a blond man with long hair that flowed down to his shoulder blades. His irises had different colors, and he had golden knuckles embedded with mana-reinforced gemstones on both hands. While everyone wore battlesuits made from monster parts, he simply wore a plain shirt, pants, and boots. His confidence was off the charts, and Lotus couldn't blame him. That man was Philip, a 24-year-old normal human who suddenly awakened a Paragon-tier creature with the potential of a progenitor. From a nobody, he suddenly became sought after by several guilds and the authorities after all. His summon was one with strong defense, trick and strength factors. It was a T-Rex capable of spitting powerful beams. The guild signed a contract of millions to get him. The price was high, but their guild had no choice due to Justice Guild's allure. According to what they've heard, the Justice Guild had a full team made up of paragons and a few progenitors. There was a rumor that the Vice Guild Master, Eliza, was now a titled god. Some saw it as a scheme to draw people into their guild and get them to sign contracts they couldn't abandon easily. Only the Guild Master of Justice Guild was a confirmed titled god, but he was found almost dead after exiting a Purple Gate dungeon that met him in his own house. No one could recognize it, as it was said he was burnt to a crisp. On the other hand, Lotus' eyes went to her guild master, Johan, a man who also encountered a Purple Gate dungeon and came out with his life, but he lost one arm. Unfortunately, damage done by a titled god tier monster could only be healed by someone of that tier, and there wasn't any known healer of that tier yet. So their guild master was currently one-handed, yet he wasn't a titled god. but at least he was a powerful paragon with a peak-level progenitor tier potential. I hope he delivers. A girl walked up to Lotus and crossed her arms while looking at Philip. Lotus pursed her lips. I heard he mocked our guild master for being one-handed. Can he survive a titled god? The girl gritted her teeth. Lotus placed a hand on the girl's shoulder. We're about to enter a dungeon. Now's not the time to complain about a teammate. He'll help, he's a defender now. Gather up. Johan's voice rang and the combatants gathered. Unlike other guilds, their guild only had combatants. Philip and I will be the vanguard. Falco, you'll lead the long-range team. Lotus, you and your team will deal with the eggs while we're focused on the boss. Johan said, This isn't the first time I've said this. It's been 6 hours since this dungeon opened. An odd occurrence, but nothing's too odd these days. I believe the dragon is waiting to hatch its eggs, so we better take this opportunity. Johan turned back. Let's go. He walked through the swirling gate and the others followed. Philip activated the eclipsal state skill and grew tough scales all over his body. His legs became digitigrade. His height rose to 18 feet. A thick, powerful tail, sharp as a blade at the end, swayed behind him. His arms bulged with muscles covered with scales, and black claws protruded out of where his fingers should be. His jaws elongated, boasting a powerful set of fangs, and the aura of a 24.8 paragon billowed out of him. Lotus summoned her orchid mantis and fused with it. She went into its body and could see from its eyes. Others unleashed their summons, but some rode on them. Johan unleashed his manticore. It was a massive lion with bat-like wings and a scorpion's tail. This beast was so massive, its head almost touched the ceiling of his cavern, but Johan activated eclipsal state. It covered his body. He became a 15-foot-tall man with the face of a lion, wild mane, massive black wings, and a scorpion tail whose surface gleamed like iron right out of the forge. Their eyes glittered with the gold hills, but the acid streams made them more cautious. Lotus and her team began to crack the eggs along the way, destroying whatever was inside. But when they got to the main hall, their eyes dilated. Beiel laid, seemingly asleep, but hundreds of the eggs had hatched. Some had killed their brothers and sisters to feed on their flesh. Their roars went far. Though young dragons, they were saint tiers and were 16 feet long. Beiel opened his eyes, and a deep growl bounced against the walls of the massive cavern. "Have you come to die?" Beiel asked as he rose to his feet, spreading out his enormous wings. "Don't let him fly," Johan roared as he raced toward Beiel, but the dragon spawns launched a fierce attack against his team. Under siege by a swarm of Saints-tier dragons that spat acid, the team's morale crumbled when 3 summoners who had fused with their summons melted. They were supposed to attack from afar. Their defense was minimal. Philip roared, grabbed a dragon spawn, slammed it into the ground, and tore its head off. He unleashed a beam, killing 3 other dragons. "Philip the dragon," Johan roared, but it was too late as Beiel flapped his wings and ascended, unleashing a rain of acid from his tattered wings. As Beiel soared above them, there was a downpour of acid from its wings. 7 summoners were dissolved instantly in their frantic race to find shelter. Others managed to, and glued their bodies to the rocks they hid behind, with beating hearts threatening to leap out of their chests. None of them could defend against the full attack of a progenitor-tier dragon, not even their guild master. Philip knew this, but right now his eyes were on the heap of gold and gemstones so close to his hiding place. He picked a gemstone, marveling at the enormous amount of mana within it. There was no doubt it would fetch quite the price. Philip hurriedly slipped the gemstone into his pocket since he deactivated his eclipsal state upon scrambling behind this rock. In the eclipsal state, his aura would be wild enough for the dragon to spot him quickly. While he was fortunate, the others weren't. The smaller dragons launched a siege on them, dragging them out of their hiding place as they fought fiercely for survival. Their screams pierced his ears, but Philip held his breath and looked away. He had a little sister to look after. He couldn't save everyone. All he had to do was wait for the right moment and flee this dungeon. Their plan did not include fighting an army of almost 200 dragons. Just then, a loud screech made him look. He saw the girl that spoke to Lotus before they entered the dungeon. She was slapped away by one of the dragon spawns. She crashed into a rock while her summon, a large winged bird, was pinned down by the dragon. Another dragon landed on the rock, acidic saliva dripping from its mouth as it closed in to rip her head off. In that moment, a projection of Lotus' summon burst forward. Projections were mostly used to unleash one powerful skill. The translucent orchid mantis shot forward, activating Pink Blossom, a skill that not only doubled the mantis' speed but manifested pink orchid flowers everywhere. It hid the orchid mantis, allowing it to decapitate the dragon that was about to eat the wind bird in one swift slash. Lotus, fused with her summon, did the same move, but toward the dragon that was about to devour her comrade. But when her bladed arms slashed the dragon, nothing happened, not even a scratch. Beiel used Grief Transfer, a progenitor tier skill that allowed the progenitor to take whatever will cause any sort of grief, and also give its own grief to a specific target. It handled physical damages, and sometimes emotional. Beiel took the blow, but it had no effect on him. However, Lotus was wide open, allowing the small dragon to spit acid at her. She screamed as the acid splashed on her. Her summon's defense factor was low, but the dragon couldn't kill her with that. Beiel could. Fortunately, the dragon boss snapped toward the bigger threat, Johan, who emerged from his hiding place. It spat acid, but Johan hid behind another rock. These rocks had enough mana density to resist the dragon's acid to some extent, or this place wouldn't be its cave. Johan didn't expect the dragon's tail. It swept through everything in its path, shattering the rock and launching him several hundred feet away. The cavern quaked the moment Johan slammed into the wall. The others could only see a dust cloud as he was too far away. "Now," Philip yelled in his mind. He swiftly unleashed a T-Rex and bolted out of his hiding place. His summon gathered a large amount of mana and fired a beam, striking Beiel right at the face. The impact launched Belial's head to the opposite direction with great momentum, almost forcing the great dragon to fall. Beiel turned, but the massive T-Rex was gone. He quickly locked on the fleeing Philip, who thought the dragon couldn't track the T-Rex's mana signature to him. Philip was still new to this. He didn't understand that a summon could still be tracked to the summoner. "You think you can run?" Belial's furious roar made Philip panic. Beiel unleashed a massive acid fog that swept out, closing in on Philip. It was gaining on him, and this Paragon tier summoner forgot to switch to Eclipsal state to increase his speed as fear clouded his reasoning. All he could think of was that if he unleashed his summon again, the dragon could kill it, and that would mean the end for him. "I should have joined the Justice Guild." Philip almost wept internally. Joining the Justice Guild wouldn't make him anything too special, and that was the reason he came to the Gate Defenders Guild. Here he was their ace, but now that ace could hear Belial's deep growl and the stench of its mouth, that had feasted on the flesh and bones of countless, engulfed him like a faint fog. Wasn't the acid fog enough? Did it have to chase after him too? Just when Beiel and the fog were about to consume Philip, he saw a light at the entrance of the cave. Something was coming, something fast. A fierce gust of wind that almost pulled off his hair swept past him and collided with Beiel. The dragon that was behind him a second ago was gone. Philip couldn't think about what hit Beiel, as before his eyes was a huge crimson knight with 10 golden lightning tendrils, 5 on both sides. They were long enough to touch the ground. This knight had a golden halo above his helmet. He stretched his hand, unleashing a soft golden radiance that expelled the acidic fog. Beside this knight was another, a female crimson knight with 4 massive flaming wings. He could see each feather vividly, and they billowed with blue fire. "This dragon belongs to the king," Tempest declared. "From henceforth do not interfere," Toria added, and they both flew past him. Philip's heart drummed. He turned and saw Beiel falling to the ground after some clash midair with the existence that breezed past him. The cavern shook when Beiel collapsed before a humanoid dragon-like being with 2 swords, Patan noble generals. "3 of them, how is this possible?" Belial's eyes trembled. "You're supposed to be dead." Belial unleashed an acid breath on Solstice, but the dragon knight covered himself with his wings, closed in, and swung his sword downward. He unleashed a sword beam that cut open Belial's right eye and almost divided his skull. Belial swiftly activated grief transfer, and the damage was sent to his young ones. 10 young dragons incinerated to death, and in exchange, Belial had his right eye back. For grief transfer to work, the target had to be willing. All his young ones were willing, but that skill took a tremendous amount of mana and couldn't be used often. Using it twice put Belial in a bad spot. He flapped his wings. It was best they fought this battle in the sky, but Toria's rapier came at that moment. It transformed into a long blade whip that sliced a great portion of flesh off Belial's left wing. The rest was seared off by her flames. Belial roared, spitting acid everywhere. A loud boom echoed as Tempest landed on his back from above. He only heard a lightning flash, and Tempest was above him. Having borrowed from his mate, Tempest, who was already a 27 paragon in blackout state, rose to 28 while Toria's tear dropped. He lifted his spear and plunged it through the dragon's scales right between its wings. The spear grew in length, bursting out of Belial's chest, forcing the dragon to roar. Tempest's wings opened like a blooming flower and pierced Belial, unleashing a tremendous amount of lightning that brightened the cavern brilliantly. Belial roared not just in pain, but with fear as Solstice grabbed its lower jaw and slammed its head into the ground, shattering the floor. The dragon knight stabbed Belial's lower jaw, pinning the dragon to the ground. "Good Lord, they're making a dragon look helpless, a progenitor no less," Philip stuttered in disbelief. "This isn't a fair fight," Johan grunted. "It's a merciless onslaught," he said as Toria swung her rapier. It transformed into a whip that went around the dragon's neck twice. Then she borrowed strength from Tempest, coated her whip with flames, and dragged it with a grunt. It tore off a good portion of Belial's neck, attached to his head from the rest of his body. "My lord of the Pathanis, they're on Earth. Those nightmares are," Belial's consciousness darkened. The sight of those 3 generals plagued him even in death. These knights showed no mercy to beasts. Their brutality terrified, scared even the great dragons. The young dragons. Lotus looked around and saw the rest of the dragons were already dead, with massive holes on their bodies. When Solstice blitzed past Philp, he used 100 Sun's skill, and due to his advantage in tier, he was able to conjure the fireballs in the bodies of the dragons, thus annihilating Belial's army before making first contact with the boss. Tempest pulled out his spear, Toria sheathed her rapier, while Solstice sheathed his twin swords as they all reverted to their normal golden-armored states. "Chief," Tempest took the core that formed above the dragon, jumped down, and handed it over to Solstice. "RT the girl Lotus saved stammered. "The Golden Knights, summons of the man we all acknowledged as the strongest of the Age of Origins because of his feats. And yes, I can see the same thing you see, he has more now." Lotus responded as the knights stepped into their portals and vanished. "They call Adam the king of summoners, him, the definition of a summoner. As much as I want to laugh that off, they're not wrong," Johan coughed. "Could it be he's come to dominate this era too? Look, are you interested or not? The raid could be finished at any time. At the jewelry store, the same man tried convincing Godfrey. His eyes widened when Godfrey suddenly manifested a core and dropped it on the counter. "This should be able to handle it. It's a dragon's core," Godfrey said to the saleswoman. "I'll have to confirm, sir," she said and brought out a tablet. This one was used to measure cores. She scanned the core, and the number began to read. It climbed higher and higher until it stopped at 28.5 and identified the core as being from a dragon. Her eyes widened. "This is a progenitor's dragon core," she gasped. "But how?" Her mouth hung open as she stared at Godfrey. "The ring," he said. "Oh, I apologize." She quickly packaged the ring and handed it over. "The heart god owes you a favor. You can take that or select something else to match the price of the core you brought." "It's all right." Godfrey walked away. As she watched him leave, her eyes suddenly widened and she covered her mouth. "I remember now. He's the fanatic that killed the wind boar summoner. The same man suspected to be behind the death of a Pendragon member and the former Mr. Manhattan." Her hand reached out for the red button below the counter, but another hand grabbed her wrist. "Manager." The saleswoman's eyes widened further when she saw a gray-haired man. He was her boss, and he stopped her. "What do you want to do? You see a man with over $1 billion bounty on his head, yet he walks like a free man and you plan to report him." His eyes pierced hers. "Do you not cherish your life?" He left her hand. "You saw no one. What stood before you is beyond our mere existence. Consider yourself lucky." The manager warned. Just then, Ballista deactivated his invisibility, stared at the woman for a while, then turned. He took a few steps and vanished. The saleswoman collapsed, eyes trembling. Seeing Ballista leave, the manager sighed. "That man is the authorities' Achilles' heel, so young yet so dreadful. He's been at odds with the authorities and still walks free, so much that he's basically a legend. It would take a gang of progenitors or the intervention of titled gods, maybe higher-tiered beings, to bring down that man." The manager shivered. "What a freak, Daddy." A whisper left her lips as he watched her get ripped from limb to limb while he could do nothing but scream. When her head was lost in the maw of the beast, Adam's eyes snapped open. The last words of his daughter haunted him. He could almost see her with missing limbs, dangling like a doll in that sadistic beast's claws as she whispered those words. "Daddy." He had one job, yet he failed. Adam began hyperventilating as his entire body trembled. His head and hands shook so much he could barely control them. Adam looked at his trembling hands and reached out for the staff pinned to the ground. The moment he grabbed it, the trembling stopped. With a soft grunt, Adam sat up and looked around. He wasn't just lying on corpses. Several kilometers all around him were the corpses of warrior ants, soldier ants, and worker ants, all gigantic, over 1,000 feet tall, but that didn't save them from being torn apart by his staff. Ant hills 3 times bigger than the tallest building on Earth were scorched black and broken apart. All around Adam reeked of the stench of death. He was the man that had populated the afterlife world. He had become the ruination itself, not just to mature worlds but to as many as his feet touched. A white gate appeared before him and he walked through it. Adam stood before the manna tree and a fruit fell from above. It was different from other fruits. A galaxy was within this fruit, gleaming with countless stars. Adam tossed it to the Monkey King, who popped up from a diagram, grabbed the fruit and began to munch on it. Adam's twisted nature had also affected his once golden Monkey King. Now it had black fur with crimson lines and cracks, holding a staff that wasn't golden anymore but black with crimson markings. Only his headband and his eyes remained golden. The terrifying aura this summon released could paralyze titled gods, making them seem like monolith beings. Right now, the Monkey King had one of the top-ranking flames, core hellfire. which he sucked into himself after defeating the hell demon and destroying hell. Twisted or not, Adam was growing. He was a hero broken before his journey even started, a man stuck reliving one scene and had descended into madness, sealing off every door of healing. Adam looked at the manna tree. Maybe you can't be killed, but so what? I'll eradicate whatever isn't human. I'll ruin you that way, he whispered as a white gate appeared behind him. Adam knew when he first appeared here. It was over a century ago, after he watched his wife and daughter get brutally killed and eaten. When it was his turn, he found himself here. Something spoke to him, a voice from the depth of his heart asking if he wanted anything, anything at all, to take vengeance. What would it be? Wishing for their death didn't work, and so he remembered his daughter's favorite icon, the Eastern myth, a being without equal. It was absurd, but with that he could quench his thirst, and Adam said it. He mentioned summoning. He was the reason Earth's mana system was summoning. He was the origin of Earth's summoners, and his summon was the most absurd of them all, a myth made real. Wiping out all the monsters on Earth couldn't satisfy him. His trauma didn't end, not until everyone or whatever isn't human dies. As Adam emerged from the white gate, he saw a golden humanoid ant with its wings spread out, hovering above the battlefield. It was the devouring Emperor Ant. Are you the ruler of your world? For what reason have you done this? The rules are to claim a world you must go through a dungeon. I never knew we were statting reasons for taking a life these days. Adam tilted his head while the Monkey King unleashed red flames along the length of his staff. Those flames grew hotter and more powerful the more he killed. The Ant King's claws grew long enough to reach its knees. Its eyes gleamed. You will face the judgment of a ruler. What? The ant gasped in the next moment as the Monkey King had moved past him, and his head had been slapped off his neck. Took you 100 business days to get here. Ants, no brains indeed. Adam scowled. The fool still couldn't kill him while he slept because his summon was on watch. Adam didn't know what he could have been with a loved one. Godfrey didn't know what he could have been without one. Maybe they might have switched places. That's the last one. A woman wearing round glasses attached to a rope said with a soft smile. She stood in a radiant room, gazing at Isald, who finally took a long breath after she took off the last gown. It had been a whole day, and they couldn't select one gown because she looked breathtaking in all of them. Finally, they had settled for one. Isald's eyes suddenly widened. Doesn't my husband need something special? Bring your best, he needs to test it out. The designer was stunned. Her eyes went down to Isald's fingers but found nothing. Pendragons married quite early, especially the heads, but Selene was recently adopted. It was quite quick, but understandable since it was part of the family's tradition. Husband, you're married, she asked to confirm if she really heard correctly. Isald revealed a sweet smile that made the designer's eyes slowly widen. She expected Selene to be upset and uncomfortable with this partner who must have been forced on her, but right now, the designer couldn't help but imagine who could make this beautiful young woman's face light up like this. She must really like him. Just then, Isald left the room in a hurry. Lady Selene, the designer went after her. They searched the mansion, but he couldn't be found. However, the designer got to know his name was Godfrey. Who in the world was this Godfrey that would make a woman, who at a slight whisper countless men would gather for, sulk like this? It was already late, and the search ended with Godfrey nowhere in sight. She couldn't reach him since they weren't connected telepathically, nor could she retrieve herself into his chamber. At the dining table, Christine turned to Arthur Pendragon before looking at Isald, who had not touched her food. What is it? She asked, lowering her cutlery. When Isald lifted her head, Arthur spoke. Tomorrow is your day. You have to be prepared physically and mentally, so eat. I don't have the appetite. Isald exhaled, tilting her head in different directions as if waiting for someone to pop out of nowhere. She sighed and left the dining room, sulking. Christine and Arthur looked at themselves, guessing it might be the pressure of the occasion. On her way back, Isald's thoughts drifted like a lonely boat on a calm sea. She had prepared for this day her whole life, but now that it was imminent, she felt pressure. After all, Isald would face people who she had not seen for over a decade or in her entire life, and had to exert dominance and control over them or be taken for granted, losing her dignity and power right on the very first day. All these made her long for him. Isald wanted to see that face, lay her head on his chest, and let that pressure melt away. She couldn't tell her parents the girl they groomed to be independent wasn't actually independent. In fact, she depended on Godfrey for a lot of things. He was like that tiny piece that held a puzzle together. Once gone, she would crumble. He had been there since her childhood, like a soulmate following her step by step as she grew. Isald shut the door to her room and leaned on it, clasped her hands together, and placed them on her chest. "Frey, where are you?" she whispered, then went to her window and opened it. She could see the lake, though far away, with walls of trees on both sides. It sparkled under the moonlight. Isald folded her arms on the windowsill and laid her head on them, gazing at the pond while she was lost in thought. Did he go to raid a dungeon? Maybe he's in Patan. Why am I acting like he's supposed to be here when there's a lot for him to do? She pursed her lips. I'm a burden. I left him to handle my own affair, so he had every right to do the same. She sighed, blowing hot air out of her mouth. Suddenly there was a knock. Isald leapt like a cat, raced to the door and opened it wide, her eyes bright with aching emotions. The male servant who came with a cloche with fruits her mother personally sliced blushed when Isald stared at him like that. He was afraid she would hear his drumming heart. Of course, Isald heard. She scowled at herself inwardly, mocking how she rushed toward the door like that. In the end, she couldn't hide the disappointment in her eyes as the man dropped the cloche and left the room. She shut the door and went straight to her bed. You can live a day without him. Besides, I've been training for this. I've subdued dragons. I don't need Godfrey, Isald said to herself, but as she laid down, there was another knock on the door. She sighed heavily and calmly went to the door. Is there anything else? Her eyes widened at the sight of the blonde-haired, tall man before her door. He was smiling, but she wanted to punch that beautiful smile off his face. Seething with anger that came from nowhere, she lashed out. What are you doing here? This is Celine's bedroom and I. She tried pushing him away when he drew close, but Godfrey grabbed her wrist, spun into the room, shut the door and pressed her against it. Isald's eyes almost spat flames, but her body felt otherwise. Godfrey leaned in for a soft kiss on her cheek, then he went on one knee, holding out her left hand. Isald's eyelashes trembled as he revealed a ring. Godfrey met her eyes. I've been practicing for the entire day but couldn't get it right. I might be a king, but there's no shame in kneeling before my queen. Celine or Isald, you're mine. Isald blinked innocently as her face was frozen in that expression. It made her even cuter in Godfrey's eyes. He smiled and slid the ring into the fourth finger of her left hand. It glided through her long claws and settled immaculately on her finger. Then, he also slid the eternity ring into the same finger. Forever. He revealed his own rings. Would you? Isald almost forgot how to breathe. The moment she slid the rings into his finger, she jumped on him, wrapping her legs around his waist. Godfrey caressed her back and kissed her hair. He took her to the bed. Isald's hair sprayed, dyeing a good portion of the white mattress crimson. She was a sight to behold in Godfrey's eyes. He descended on her, but Isald's finger stopped his lips midway. Get out. Those words doused his urge, bringing him back to reality. What? Godfrey blinked. He didn't believe his eyes when Isald dragged him outside. Her eyelashes were wet from the overwhelming joy in her heart. "Give me an hour," she whispered into his ear before shutting the door. Godfrey looked at the right and left side of the hall. Luckily, it was empty. No one saw him get tossed out. What was she doing? Godfrey paced about. Those words were triggering. His body wasn't functioning normally. He needed a release, and she was pushing him to his limits. He was excited, curious, and nervous altogether. Isald looked too appealing for him to keep his confidence. It almost felt like this was their first time once more, and this time around, he was actually the one that made the first move. After waiting for a while, the door clicked and opened, revealing Isald in a black lingerie set that exposed a considerable portion of her cleavage. She didn't wear revealing clothes, but this switched off his brain. Her hair was still damp, and her scent flooded his nostrils, drawing him close like a beast moving on primal instincts. The lingerie made her already stunning figure more enthralling. Isald bit her lower lip, glistening with lip gloss, and slowly tucked a part of her hair behind her ear in a seductive way. Godfrey didn't know when he kissed those lips that had been tempting him. He pushed her into the room, closing the door with his foot as they were already upon the bed. "Don't go too wild, Tilda," Isald whispered between gasps. The next morning, 2 maids entered the room for daily cleanup after they were told that Isald wasn't in the room any longer. As one of the maids pushed the curtains aside, the other went straight to the bed. She leaned down, grabbed the duvet, and was about to pull it off when the bed suddenly collapsed. Her eyes widened. What did Miss Selling do to the bed? She gasped inwardly. Isald, who sat in one of the smaller sitting rooms in the mansion, sneezed softly. She lowered the list that contained information of people that would be attending the event, gently rubbed her nose before picking up a small teacup billowing with steam from the dark brown liquid that filled the cup. She eyed Godfrey while sipping the coffee. "You got out of hand." "In what?" Godfrey, who sat on a sofa adjacent to hers, blinked. Isald rolled her eyes. "You only held that bed together with telekinesis, you brute." "Says the woman who wouldn't let me take a bath in peace this morning," Godfrey retorted. The butler walked in at that moment, forcing Isald to glare at him as a faint pink hue appeared on her cheeks. The butler dropped a tray filled with snacks, bowed, and left. "I don't think he heard," Godfrey said, but Isald was having none of that. She picked a biscuit and flung it at him. Godfrey caught the biscuit and threw it into his mouth. "Don't waste food." "Get out," she hissed. Godfrey blinked, obviously triggered by that word. Another hour. Isald blushed hard. He stood up and went behind her sofa, resting both hands on her shoulders, peering at the list in her hand. "So, is there anyone we should be worried about tonight?" "Quite a few," Isald replied, comporting herself. "There's my distant uncle, Michael Pendragon, also known as the Wealthy Dragon. He's an indispensable part of the family and the wealthiest, not just in money but dungeon materials. He has connections with guilds, the authorities, renowned freelancers, and we suspect he funds a powerful independent group that works solely for him." She brought the list up and pointed at his name. "Our family is divided into 2. I'm amongst the blacks and he is the unofficial leader of the whites. It wasn't really an unhealthy competition. Both sides were always trying to outdo the other to stay on top, but not to the extent of killing ourselves. It made us the best version of ourselves. Unfortunately, my uncle weakened us, and now the whites have the advantage." Godfrey squinted. "So the family is a cohesive force of dragons, quite different from the dragons of your domain." "The summons of this family are imitations of dragons. They share lots of similarities, but core traits of the dragon kind are filtered out. We might be prideful, but not to the level of a true dragon. If I can rule them, I may be able to figure out a way to build a cohesive force of dragons. Imagine a nation of dragons all united with one purpose or goal. Together with the Pendragons, it would be the strongest force on Earth, and we would be the head." Isald looked at Godfrey. Earth was growing. Not just in mana but also in size, in dungeon numbers, in stronger foes and factions merging to form stronger ones or new powerful factions emerging. Having a foothold on Earth would also prove useful as this was his world. Isald looked at the list once more. Michael is dangerous, but he's equally important. I have to keep him. A public strife with him might harm the family's unity. There are also other important members, but if we have Michael under control, they'll follow. Her eyes went down and sharpened. This one is something else. Gwen Pendragon, the Blue Menace. Sounds like she's a tough one. Who's she? Godfrey raised an eyebrow. Her summon is a cannibal. It delights in eating dragons. It's a summon that has developed a taste for blood. Fortunately, she hasn't eaten the dragon of any Pendragon. Isald began with a grave tone. She's the oldest member, the only living member of the first Pendragons. She survived the great despair caused by the appearance of Mana. She survived Cain's blood march that lasted 10 years. She saw the plague that took Russia like a storm. She's the oldest member of the family and the first head's direct disciple. Isald's eyes narrowed. I've heard a lot about her, but I've never seen her. My father has seen her once. She's coming tonight. Sounds like a nightmare, Godfrey said, and Isald responded with a nod. She is. No need to worry, I've got your back. He spoke warmly, making her smile. Several hours passed, and the night finally came. Lots of luxury cars drove into the mansion. Although the mansion boasted a massive courtyard, it was almost filled with cars and people. Lots of reporters were at the gate. Only a few were granted access into the courtyard, but they weren't even allowed to enter the hall. From a sedan with a white dragon with wings spread out, Michael stepped out with his wife Adrian. His son, Imeric, also came down. Their eyes went to another Pendragon family. It was Melania, the mother of Geoffrey, and his sister Ivy. Both families nodded at each other before heading for the entrance. Imeric studied Ivy for a while, then looked away when she noticed. "What do you think?" Adrian asked, tilting her head toward Imeric. Imeric shrugged. "She's not bad." Adrian, who was holding her husband, chuckled. "Once your father becomes head, we would speak to her parents. Your union could bring blacks and whites together." Seeing his son's expression, Mitchell comforted him. "If we set aside the difference of 2 generations who died early due to the era they were born, we Pendragons are not of one blood. We were just a bunch of dragon summoners brought together and given one name." "Oh," Adrian chuckled. "I trust your charm, don't make a mistake." "Don't you know me?" "Of course I won't," Imeric replied with confidence as they entered the hall. The hall was massive and beautifully decorated with lots of round tables and spiral chandeliers. A white carpet from the entrance was connected to 2 staircases that led to the mezzanine and went straight to a large platform where instrumentalists sat, playing cool, soothing music that embraced everyone the moment they stepped foot in the hall. It wasn't just the ambience, but also the atmosphere felt like walking on clouds, an otherworldly beauty. This hall was opened only when a head was to be appointed. This part of the hall was for the banquet, and the other part, which was currently pitch black, was for the ball. The light there would only switch on when the moment came. Imeric sat down, while his parents spoke to other Pendragons who were pleased to meet them. He glanced around and saw a group of young men his age secretly pointing and talking like little kids without control. With a frown, Imeric looked at what they were so excited about. He saw an enchanting beauty on the mezzanine. Her red hair was smooth and pulled back tightly from her face and neck. It was a sleek updo, a shinyan. She wore an off-shoulder black velvet evening gown that embraced her curves. The golden tear marks and long eyelashes drew his gaze to her draconic eyes that barely showed emotions. Imeric forgot to breathe for a moment. She did not wear a mask, yet it looked like she did. No one could look that exceptional. "What an outstanding piece of art," he gasped. His parents, who returned at this moment, heard his words. "What?" Adrian looked at Isald along with her husband. "Who's that?" she asked. "I have no idea," Michael responded. "I'll find out." Imeric left his seat and went straight for the mezzanine, but after walking past several people to reach there, he couldn't find her. She remained in his mind while the event went on. Eventually, the time came for the appointment. The ball was what actually took the time during this event. The banquet wasn't meant to be that long. Arthur, dressed in an oxblood suit, stood on the platform and tapped a spoon against his cup of wine. Tonight, before this family, allies, and honored guests, he looked around. People were already glancing at Michael, who cleared his throat and adjusted his tie. "I declare my daughter the next head of House Pendragon." "Daughter?" Adrian became confused. She wasn't the only one, as others were visibly stunned at what Arthur announced. Wasn't Michael supposed to be the next head, and wasn't Arthur's daughter dead? "Celine Pendragon," Arthur said. The hall darkened, and lights shone on the young woman descending from the mezzanine. "It's her." Imeric's eyes widened. He watched Isald make her way to the platform, under the stunned gaze of several dozen influential people. Michael's eyes darted around. He could feel the gaze of many on him. "Arthur, what are you doing?" Mitchell rose to his feet. "Appointing the next head who is qualified to lead this family," Arthur replied calmly. It took all the willpower in Michael not to flip his table over. "You adopted a stranger just to make sure power remains in your family. Very unlike you, Arthur. I'm disappointed." Mitchell straightened his back. "We reject this." "Who's we?" Isald raised an eyebrow. "Uncle, please sit down. Don't ruin my day," she added. Michael's eyes widened. "What do?" A sudden force descended on him. It was will freeze, a skill gained at the titled God tier. The force pierced into the mind and paralyzed the body with fear. Mitchell tried to take a step back but couldn't. He almost collapsed but held his table, wine spilling from the glass cups as they fell. Everyone watched him, reeling to the words of this girl. A titled God tier. Michael's eyes widened to the limit. At that moment, Isald activated Dragon Eyes, an oppressive skill that could kill with just a gaze. The reason was the sheer scale of fear that exploded within the target. It was a dragon's version of will freeze with intensity, several times that of the normal titled God skill. "Dad," Imeric couldn't believe his eyes as his father clutched his heart, but just as he was about to fall, the force vanished. Silence spread out throughout the hall. The Pendragons were shocked at this girl's audacity and strength. Isald didn't hide her aura, so no one would guess this was her father's doing and not hers. "You brought a mother of dragons, an apex amongst our kind, to be our head. Not bad at all," Gwen's voice echoed. Everyone turned to the blue-haired woman with two horns who came out from the crowd, clapping. Standing before Isald, Gwen smiled. "I see no reason to reject." "The rare mother of dragons," Michael's voice rang as he composed himself, approached the platform and stood beside Gwen. "A summoner with the potential to become a god queen, a being that gives dragons a second chance at life." He took her hand and pecked it. "I had no idea," Michael added as his eyes went to her rings. Isald smiled, but internally she accessed the situation from a rational standpoint. From what she could see, Michael jumped in because of Gwen's support, and not just that, he saw use in her. A being that gives dragons a second chance at life. That was basically saying the family would be at peace, knowing someone would definitely bring them back. Yes, she could do that under the right circumstances, but at this moment, Michael was about to turn her into an object to be used and not a leader to be respected. Her smile brightened externally while her eyes unleashed a deadly gleam internally. She could manage this, after all. Before the public she was accepted. The only thing she couldn't figure out was why Gwen would vouch for her. Did she truly respect the mother of dragons? God Queen, is that a tier? Some Pendragons asked themselves. Sounds like a very powerful tier. I never imagined there would be someone so young yet much more talented than Isald. Ivy gasped. Can we get on to dancing already? It has been a decade since I danced. Gwen smirked as the lights came on, illuminating the other part of the large hall. This was a masquerade party. That was why almost everyone wore masks, with the sole exception of the new appointed head, who would be the first to start the ball with her partner. Without giving Isald room to breath, Michael threw a question at her. Where's your partner? Could it be someone within the family or a powerful figure from a top guild? Could it be that she's with someone from another family? Who could it be? How far did Arthur plan? Michael thought with furrowed eyebrows. Selin, your partner is here, isn't he? Gwen asked when she noticed Isald's eyes darting about. Is this a fake arrangement? And her partner stood her up. Good, this works in my favor. If he isn't available, why don't my son fill in for him? Michael gestured for Imeric, who swiftly walked over. Godfrey, what's wrong with you today? Isald clenched her teeth. The music had begun once more, and she had to be the first to grace the dance floor. She was with Godfrey upstairs. Where had he gone to? Lady Selin, shall we? Imeric stretched out his hand. Sorry I'm late. Godfrey's voice rang, forcing everyone to look at the man on the mezzanine. Everyone saw a golden-haired man with a silver mask walk out of the cloak of a huge golden knight. Was an entrance with ballista necessary? Yes. He was in a tuxedo. He's called the Golden Knight Summoner, a man who has been known to summon over 20,000 golden knights, one of the first being the giant bow knight. Name, Godfrey Daniels, 18 years old, publicly known as the strongest of the Age of Origins. He's both a threat and a friend. Imeric recalled what he heard online. That was him, the man with the vile title of the Golden Fanatic and an honored one, the strongest of the Age of Origins. Imeric squinted. He wasn't the only stunned one. What are you doing with filth like that? Imeric turned to Selin. She must have been with him recently. He was publicly known as Isald's partner. There was no way a woman of Selin class would accept someone like that. Mind your mouth, Godfrey said, walked past him and wrapped his hand around Isald's waist, revealing his ring to the crowd. As you can see, I'm no longer a widower. Imeric's eyes widened. Talk, that's all the crowd does. Godfrey scowled inwardly. Then turned to Isald. Shall we? She glared at him. My parents summoned me, Godfrey whispered to her as they made their way to the dance floor. Try not to fall this time, she said. Don't let me. As they waltzed, other Pendragons joined them. Godfrey found it a bit difficult, but his little practice and Isald's help allowed him to keep up. Where do you think she came from? Adrian asked her husband as they danced not far from Godfrey and Isald. She's probably a normal human who got lucky and became a summoner with one of the most powerful potentials in this new age, Mitchell replied. It's the dawn of gods. Someone like her isn't surprising. And Arthur allowed her to be with his dead daughter's partner. Michael's wife frowned. Arthur is desperate to keep power with the blacks, and that young man is obviously seduced by her beauty. You've seen how our son has been since he saw her. A woman, a beautiful woman, especially one like that, can weave a man like threads in her fingers. The boy might not be weak, but he obviously won't refuse the bed of such a woman. Mitchell analyzed calmly. Adrian turned her head towards her son, who sat at his table with a dark expression. He's already lost sight of what he was supposed to do. She glared at her son as Ivy was on the dance floor with someone else. From what I can deduce, Selin is putting up a front. There's no way a woman that acts and speaks with such physical appeal will settle for one man, especially one that was the partner of Arthur's late daughter. But Selin must love power, and if putting up with that young man will guarantee that, she would. From the way she spoke, you would know she's obsessed with power and won't stay long with a man that might fade in this new age, she added, glancing at the couple. Mitchell exhaled. The man you speak of has always been facing odds time and time again. It won't be wise to underestimate him, but yes, I also doubt Celine's feelings are genuine. He squinted. Even if she likes him, it can't be that deep. There'll be a crack eventually. We just have to hasten it and seize the opportunity, Mitchell said with calculating eyes. Godfrey couldn't dance for long as it was getting intense. He might embarrass himself. Once they left the floor, both he and Isald met up with several Pendragon elites interested in chatting with them. They finally met Gwen. Her eyes were like that of a dragon, just like Isald's. She crossed one arm below her bosom and held a glass cup with little remains of wine with the other arm. "I would like to speak to you." Gwen glanced past Godfrey, focusing on Isald. "I hope that won't bother you." She turned to Godfrey with a smile. "There are some things that are only for the head's ears." Godfrey smiled. "Of course." He walked past her, chuckling to himself. She had power and she wasn't afraid to flaunt it. He took no offense. In a way, Isald was similar. Isald was the one who was quite offended as she followed Gwen to the mezzanine, where they stood close to the railing, watching the massive hall. People danced on one side, some chatted over drinks and light meals. This was a Pendragon gathering that occurred only when a head was appointed, and this usually took decades. "Still looking at him, huh?" Gwen's voice made Isald realize her eyes still followed her husband. "You really like that young man." She spoke lightly, then her face changed in the next moment. It became serious. "You say you're the mother of dragons. Do you know what that entails? For a human to obtain the status of the apex dragon species, a being with great potential." Isald looked at her, squinting slightly. "Have you ever heard of the chosen ones and the favored ones?" Gwen suddenly asked. Isald shook her head, but Godfrey had told her what the alchemist said. She knew of her status as a chosen one. Chosen ones are those with a mission entrusted to them. Most times, it's an impossible mission and they end up failing. You're one, a human entrusted to lead dragons. Many more dragons will come, powerful ones with incredible abilities. Your domain will always have adversities until you grow strong enough to subdue them all or die like your predecessors. I also don't think anyone can be the supreme ruler over dragon kind and live for long. Gwen locked eyes with Isald. "It's a coveted position. It's the truth, harsh or not. The favored ones, on the other hand, are much more different. They are recipients of special attention, blessings, and grace. They're not bound to any mission or any burden. They're just favored with special treatments. In most ascended worlds, they're the ones who survive." Fits the description of Cain and Adam. So she's basically saying Godfrey and I will be swallowed by our power in the end, while Cain will become exalted because he's more special. Isald tightened her fist around the railing. "Why are you telling me this?" Isald asked. "Because you and your lover are Earth's chosen ones. You two naturally have better advantages over your peers, but fate binds you. Your fate most likely ends in death, either by the hands of a foe or your own power," Gwen replied. The alchemist flashed in Isald's mind. The order turned on them, leading to their downfall. They were Patan's chosen, with a mission to lead the Patan world to answer the Mana Tree's question. Quite the depressing news on my first night as head of the family. Isald locked eyes with Gwen. Why tell her this? Why give her this message of doom without the slightest effort to lighten her heart? "Because I have a solution. I told you all this so you can see the gravity of the situation. You're just one of the Mana Tree's numerous experiments. The only difference is that you're its latest one. If you want to evade that fate, change your Mana system from what the Mana Tree gave you. I, for one, abandoned Earth's summoning system, fusing my soul to become whole once more, and I became a dragon. I'm no longer bound to Earth's tier ceiling, just like the favored." Gwen smiled. "If you want the same, abandon your place as mother of dragons, take a dragon heart and transform into a true dragon. You won't be caged, not even by the Mana Tree. You can also use polymorph to gain a human form if you desire it like me." Isald frowned. You're telling me to get weaker. I'm saying set yourself free from the burdens of your power before it's too late, Gwen replied. After a moment of silence, Isald smiled. I'll think about it. Internally, she rejected the idea. That notion of escaping the mana tree was delusional. Not even dragons could escape the mana tree, as all life depended on it, whether they liked it or not. So that's a no. Gwen chuckled, leaned closer to her, and her eyes gleamed. One last thing, you see that man? She pointed at the hall. Isald followed her gaze and found Godfrey chatting with Ivy and some Pendragons. He's not real. Gwen's words made Isald furious. The same with Cain. We live in a world of make-beliefs. I'll be around for a while. Gwen turned and walked away. Isald averted her eyes from Gwen and looked at her partner. Godfrey wasn't real. What was that supposed to mean? She's definitely trying to get into my head. There's little sense in what she said. Godfrey met Gwen at the staircase. She smiled at him while he raised an eyebrow. He went up to the mezzanine and approached Isald. She looked troubled and gazed at him strangely, as if fighting internally, and whatever caused that fight had to do with him. What did she say about me? Godfrey looked at Gwen and back at Isald, who stretched out her hand and touched his chest. She exhaled. Gwen said you're not real, that. In a way, I'm not. Godfrey's reply made Isald's eyes widen. What? What do you mean by you're not real? Godfrey leaned on the railing, twirling the wine in his glass cup. Iso, this man is the unknown king of the Patan people. I'm not supposed to exist since I wasn't real in the first place. Isald's irises trembled. She finally realized. Gwen had actually told her a secret about Cain. He was just like Godfrey, a make-belief brought into reality. She said Cain isn't real just like you, Isald said rapidly. Godfrey stood straight. What? She said Cain is like me, a belief of another race. But you said he has just one strange summon. That doesn't make any sense. I don't even know what to say or think. Let's find her. He agreed with Isald's suggestion, but after searching the hall, they couldn't find Gwen. Godfrey ran outside and found her entering a black vehicle. He dashed toward her and held the door she was about to close. Gwen raised an eyebrow. We need to talk, Godfrey said, staring right into her eyes. There was something about this woman's gaze that unsettled him, like she coveted him. He could see that desire in her eyes, and she wasn't trying to hide it. Hop in then, Gwen smirked. Godfrey's eyes narrowed. It's best if you come inside. I've stayed here too long. I've got other things to do. Then what do you mean by Cain isn't real? Godfrey interrupted when he saw this wasn't going anywhere. You said he's just like me, he added. Just like you? I never said that. All I know is that he existed before the apocalypse, but not as a human. That's all I know. Where did you get that information from? Who told you, and what was he? He's a summoner. Only Earth humans can be summoners, Godfrey asked rapidly. Slow down, boy. I never said he's not human, and I never said he's not from Earth, Gwen responded. That's all. Now let go of my door. Godfrey shut the door and watched the car drive off. He was more confused than ever. Why couldn't she just speak to him plainly? Who told her what she knew? Or was this all a lie? All thoughts of her being a clone were scratched off, since she had existed before the emergence of mana. He was growing into the belief Patan made. But if there was truth in what Gwen said, Cain might have had all his abilities from the start. If they were to factorize belief, then the usual concepts wouldn't work anymore, just as they did not apply to him. Just then Isald found him. Did you see her? I did. Then what did she say? I honestly can't make much sense of it, but I don't think she's lying. She isn't telling us the complete truth either. Cain is even more of a mystery right now, Godfrey replied. Over the course of the next few days, the Pendragons left one after the other until Arthur and Christine were left. They also left since, as a member of the Seven Heads, he was entitled to a villa. That aside, they had lots of buildings all over the world, and after decades they were free from the family's burdens. Well, they weren't really free since they would be handling global matters, but at least the burden of the family was off their shoulders. Godfrey and Isald now had a vast mansion all to themselves. Exhaling in relief, Isald shut the main door to the mansion. Finally, it's been hectic dealing with all these people trying to make sure their quota in dungeons hasn't been changed. I barely had any reasonable personal time with Frey. Before she could turn, a pair of arms went around her waist and Godfrey pecked the top of her head. "We're finally alone," his husky voice made her shiver. He caressed the segmented, ornate necklace that covered the entire length of her slender neck. "The butler," Isald gasped, but Godfrey chuckled. "He knows not to get near." The next few days were intense for both of them. Godfrey never got to fully explore this enchanting mother of dragons, and when he finally began, he lost the ability to stop. The mansion was a literal mess, as they did the deed whenever and wherever possible. Isald couldn't cook proper meals, yet somehow the kitchen wasn't spared. The butler had to give himself a vacation on the very first day. This could as well be their official honeymoon since Godfrey closed the elf dungeon in 7 days when they were meant to stay for a year or two. During these 2 weeks, Isald enjoyed being bathed by her lover, being fed by him, and much more. They also bickered, and she threw tantrums, all of which ended on the bed or wherever they made out. To the husband and wife, this was the best part of their lives. Just shut in, away from the issues of the world, embraced by the warmth of their love. Fate might have prepared a cruel journey for them, but it would not ruin this moment. It would forever be etched into their minds. One morning, Isald woke up and saw Godfrey by the window. Although the world outside was still dark, there was sunlight in this dungeon. He leaned against the window sill, basking in the sunlight. With arms crossed, he gazed at her. She only woke up to see him. No one knew how long he had been starring. Isald batted her eyelashes as Godfrey drew near and pecked her forehead. "Seriously, how do you look this stunning? I thought I would have my fill by now, but that might not be possible." His words made Isald shiver. "Jump on me and I'll bite you," she glared at him. Her remark made Godfrey remember when Isald felt so good she spat flames from her mouth. He almost lost his head. That thought calmed him down. Isald looked at the window. "We're almost halfway through the 2nd month, but the evolution hasn't stopped." She sat up. Godfrey sat on the bedside. "It might last a few more months. I've spoken to the alchemist, and they said more progenitors and titled gods will appear, but no one will be able to exceed the titled god tier despite their potential until the ruination stage is over." Isald's eyes narrowed. "What about the favored?" "They won't be limited, but we would, same for the fortunate. They can still grow even if the world fails and collapses, but I don't think Cain would want that. He wants to rule the earth so he won't let this world fall. At least that's one thing we both have in common at this moment," Godfrey replied with a grave expression. "So he's not our primary concern?" she asked. "I don't know about that. He won't try to kill me, I'm sure of that, and he won't attack either. The world has enough challenges for me at this moment. He wants me to grow. The world wants us to grow. I'm guessing he'll be quiet for now." He sighed. "Our focus should be on the kind of people who will gain power. Some might come for me now that they think they're strong. Our major problem is the dungeons. Soon, the ones that would signify the ruination will be here. Even the alchemist told me it won't be easy to clear them. Earth might lose millions, billions if we're not careful, and there's a good chance we might fail." "We won't," Isald held his hand. "Countless worlds have faced this, Isald. Only 10 succeeded. It won't be surprising if we fail," Godfrey said softly. "We won't fail then. I know you won't, and this is just the beginning. There are worlds that have become ascended for who knows how long. Even if we become one, we'll be the 10th generation. And who knows what the mana tree would bring next? This will only be the beginning and we can't stop here, Isald replied firmly. Your visions, can you still see into the future? Isald's brows furrowed and she shook her head. Nyx can't really see much now that the world is advancing at a rapid pace. Maybe after she comes out of her egg there might be a difference. It's all right, Godfrey laid on her lap looking at her face. We'll make do with what we have. You and I, we're enough. He whispered. Isald caressed his face. Her fray had grown, more like forced to grow, the same for her. Just then there was a knock on the door. Rick, what is it? Isald asked. There'll be a spar today, Lady Selene. I assumed you might have forgotten due to your busy schedule these past 2 weeks. Rick, the butler's voice, made Isald gasp softly. There was always one day in a month scheduled for training. Usually, her family sparred against Rick. Only her father survived against him in close combat. When it came to weapons, everyone lost. I will be sparing the Pendragon consort, Master Godfrey, Rick's voice rang. Why do I feel like that butler is after me? Isald chuckled. Maybe he's not happy with what you've been doing to his leader. Care to tell him who's king here? She whispered. Godfrey shrugged. There's no need. I need to stretch after all. You enjoy being called a consort. Being called one doesn't make me one, Godfrey replied while Isald giggled mischievously. What? He asked. She replied. Godfrey squinted. What are you imagining in that dirty mind of yours? Ahem. Rick's voice drew their attention back to the man behind the door. Before that, it's morning. Would you both like your breakfast in bed or in the dining room? The dinning will be there soon. Rick bowed and left. A short while later, they both sat at the dining table. Isald sat at one end and Godfrey sat at the other end. A long array of were laid out on the table with a row of maids and the chief cook. Their job was to serve the food. Whatever they wanted would be brought to them. Isald wasn't new to this, but Godfrey saw all these as waste. They couldn't eat all of it. Why am I so distant from my husband? Isald asked. Everyone was stunned. This was how the head sat. Fear fell on them as Isald's calm eyes scrutinized all of them as if piercing through their souls. They could tell this young woman wasn't human. They were so used to serving humans, but now they were serving not just a dragon but a mother of them all. And she was just as frightening as Christine Pendragon, maybe even worse. It's the norm, Lady Selene, Rick answered after a period of silence. Leave, she ordered, rose from her seat, and dragged the chair straight to Godfrey's right side and sat on it. There were only 2 chairs on this long white dining table. The maids and the cook were shocked as she smiled cutely. What do you want? Godfrey asked. Isald's eyes brightened and she began to point out what she wanted. Luckily, they weren't far, so he could stretch his hand to get them to her plate. About Rick, your father told me he's a summon. Isald nodded. He used to be the personal servant of the Dragon King, one of the strongest dragons to ever exist long ago. It's above fathers and mothers, but only beings like us can evolve into something like that. He's slowly recovering his strength as Earth gets stronger. Isald looked at him. He is the guardian of the Pendragon family and will always be one of the strongest beings globally, but he's confined to protecting the mansion. I see. Godfrey's eyes flickered. One of Earth's strongest beings is a butler without ambition other than attending to the heads of the Pendragon family. He's too passive, almost like a whetstone to grind the Pendragons into shape. I think he's always protecting the mansion because his duty was to protect the Dragon King's treasures in his cave. He never protected the Dragon King. He just fought off thieves and raiders whenever the Dragon King wasn't around or, most times, to stop them from waking the Dragon King from his slumber. He still hasn't changed. I can see why you're so good with the spear. You learned from an ancient being, Godfrey responded. Isald smiled softly. I can make a request of him, though, just once in a lifetime. If he agrees, he can act outside the mansion. Sounds like something to do when your life is in serious danger. As Godfrey replied, Rick walked up to them. You have guests, friends of the late Miss. Both of them looked at each other. They followed Rick to the door and watched him open it. Godfrey and Isald blinked at the sight of Isaac, Lucy, Rowana, and Snow. Isald, Lucy leapt, hugging Isald tightly as her eyes moistened. You look so different now. Her eyes were wide as she examined Isald. Isald smiled while Lucy went around her, her eyes growing wider. I thought I would cry, but I'm jealous at this point, Lucy said honestly. Isald chuckled. Lucy hit Godfrey's arm lightly, then dragged Isald inside. As Rowana went after them, Godfrey glared at Snow. You told her. Why are you glaring at me? Snow pointed at Isaac. The blabbermouth is right here. When he saw Lucy, he couldn't stop talking. Isaac couldn't face Godfrey. He lowered his head, completely embarrassed. Lucy isn't a clone, he said in a muted tone. Godfrey's eyebrows furrowed. You can't suspect everyone. You'll end up shutting yourself to the world. It could be what Cain wants, Snow replied as he tapped Godfrey's shoulder and walked in. Godfrey shut his eyes and sighed. Snow was right, but he couldn't drop his guard. This mansion is all yours, lucky man. Snow's voice rang while Isaac bent and crept past Godfrey, who watched him with sharp eyes. He didn't know whether to laugh or be angry at Isaac. As they all went in, Godfrey turned. He took a few steps when Rick's voice flowed into his ears. I'll prepare the gym. Go ahead, call me when it's time, Godfrey replied and went to meet the others in the living room. When Godfrey sat down, Lucy, who sat with Isald, faced him. I was worried about you. After you left, Paradise didn't feel the same. Godfrey looked at her. He didn't know what to say. Percival left after you did, then Isaac was sent away. We were all together, then all of a sudden I was alone. As if that wasn't enough, Captain Arian and his wife left the cohort. I suspected Arian wasn't the captain any longer. Godfrey's eyes narrowed. Isaac forced a smile, but his head hung low. Lucy had informed him that Arian had left the cohort, and he blamed himself for it. The current captain is a man who summons Black Knights, right? Godfrey asked. Lucy nodded. Captain Saul now leads. He made us invade an orc world. Your father and mother were part of the team. We brought down 2 settlements but faced a horde and they forced us to retreat. You invaded a world, Snow frowned. Why? Rowana looked at Lucy. Because the captain was after a relic called the soul-piercing rod, a weapon that can kill anyone and they can never be brought back to life. Godfrey's eyes gleamed. Soul-piercing rod, the same weapon that killed Tempest's first mate. So when I saw my parents in that forest, it wasn't just any dungeon, they were in an orc world. They were led there by that man. You said the cohort was forced to retreat. Are my parents okay? He asked. They're fine, Lucy replied. Thalia didn't make it, though. I saw her get shot down by that rod. Her scream pierced the entire battlefield, and none of us could do anything but defend ourselves against the almost endless number of orcs. Lucy clenched her fists. We finally found the horde chieftain with the rod, but we couldn't face his army. We lost over 40 cohort members and a greater number of summons. Honestly, if it wasn't for the captain and your dad, we would have been wiped out. Abaddon, one of the captain's summons, was riddled with several axes embedded into his armor, yet he was able to pave a path to break the encirclement, while the other Black Knight froze thousands of orcs. Unfortunately, the horde chieftain was able to counter her ice. Lucy's eyes dimmed. The captain eventually unleashed his first summon to fight the horde chieftain, but we left, so I don't know if the captain has the rod or lost it. Thalia's dead, Isaac whispered. Lucy nodded, pursing her lips to keep her emotions in check. Saul, Godfrey growled inwardly, clenching his teeth. What's happening now? He asked. The captain is offering incentives. He's willing to use a skill he calls Demigod's Essence. I heard it's a titled God-tier skill that can make anyone summon a paragon or even a progenitor. Saul wants to use Apollyon and Abaddon's Essence and even his first summon. That was enough to attract many people to join the cohort. There's also massive external recruitment. We've been going out to find humanoid summoners, hunting dungeons. He's doing all he can do to make the cohort stronger, but the death count just keeps increasing, and he calls it filtering the weak. That's cruel. It's our reality, Isald said inwardly. When is he going to elect those for the essence? Godfrey leaned forward, entwining his fingers. Not right now. Everyone is currently going through training and dungeon raiding. He's going to pick the best in a month or two. There's no exact date. Maybe there's no date because he's using this bait to empower and strengthen the cohort. Even if he doesn't give the reward, the cohort would be much stronger in the end, Snow responded. Demigod's Essence has major drawbacks. 1. The summon will be weak and incapable of combat for several days, and the summoner won't be able to gather mana into their bodies for a while. While you might have paragons and progenitors, their loyalty isn't exactly ensured, and they might have a weaker version of your skill, Isald explained. She got this knowledge from Rick. On the other hand, Godfrey contemplated these skills. The Paragon tier Eclipsal State skill was of little to no use to him. Grief transfer might badly damage his knights or even kill them. Although they were immortal, they felt pain. He also didn't fancy the thought of giving his summon's essence to another. At least for now, he didn't want to. Will Freeze, another titled God tier skill, was the only one he found really useful. Do you think this man is a clone? Snow asked. Even if he is, the one in charge right now is the main Saul, meaning this is his nature, Godfrey replied. Let's kill him. Isaac's eyes blazed. We can't kill him, Godfrey replied, turning to face Isaac. What's going to be your reason? In the eyes of others, he is reconstructing the cohort. There were some losses, painful ones, but that's it. Isaac looked away. He's not a friend, though, Isald replied. He's not. You can't kill Saul even if you want to. He's strong, and from what Lucy has said, he has 3 summons. 4. Dax is also his summon, Lucy corrected. Godfrey nodded. 4. His Black Knights are definitely peak-level progenitors or titled gods, the same for his first summon, which might be his strongest. Let's just say he has 3 titled gods. Even amongst their tier, they're powerful. So we should leave him then, Isald asked. I believe we should do what he's doing. Take advantage of the dungeons and grow stronger before the ruination hits. Once that happens, even us titled gods will be targets. Godfrey looked at all of them. I see, Snow replied. Just then Rick showed up. It's time. We can't spar during the hot afternoon, he whispered to Godfrey. After informing Godfrey, he left. Godfrey rose to his feet. He would like to test himself against Rick. Sparring with an existence of that magnitude was bound to help him get stronger. What's going on? Snow raised an eyebrow. They're about to spar, Isald responded. Godfrey wants to spar the butler. Isaac was dubious. They couldn't stay. All of them went to the gym. It was large, almost a separate building from the main mansion. Isald and the others stood on the mezzanine, watching Godfrey in a white top and black pants face off against Rick, who wore white and white. Both of them wore fingerless gloves and stood on a large platform. Around the platform were gym equipment pieces in their different sections. Rick's black hair fell over his forehead. He had a shadow beard cut and calm brown eyes. Everything about Rick was normal. His physique, his height, was just barely 6 feet. All in all, he was a normal man, completely ordinary. In this state, Rick still had extraordinary physical capabilities, but it was nothing compared to his dragon servant form that made use of mana. Standing nearly 20 feet away was Godfrey. He wore suppressors since Rick was supposed to match his strength. After they ascertained that Godfrey could lift 1,000 kilos with one arm and possessed remarkable speed and reflexes, Rick gauged it and would fight him based on those capabilities. He might be over 1,000 years old, but I have mastery. The skills of my knights might not be in ancient martial arts, but it can help. A servant of a dragon king, a powerful being even amongst ancient gods. If that's who this butler is, then I'm not sure who the winner of this spar will be, Snow analyzed. Isaac rubbed his chin. As he did, Neela appeared beside him. Everyone turned to her. Lucy and Isald were quite surprised to see the spider god. Neela leaned against the railing. The dragon servant will win the spar. This isn't even debatable. You're comparing a human who isn't even 20 and is being suppressed of his powers to a being that had defended a dragon king's domain from countless powerful thieves and raiders. This isn't even a competition, even with the dragon servant's eyes closed. There's nothing wrong with that. My father couldn't win against Rick. Godfrey is facing a powerful ancient being. Losing isn't shameful or degrading. This spar is meant to refine his skills, Isald retorted without looking at Neela. Neela glanced at her from the corner of her left eye. He's the Shadow King. He won't lose that easily. I'm sure Godfrey is going to shock Rick, Isaac smiled, while Neela rolled her eyes, then crossed her arms. This human was being suppressed. Were all his friends delusional? Lucy wasn't even bothered with who would win and who would lose, as she was simply happy that her friends were all together after a long time. At that moment, Rick dashed toward Godfrey, leaped, and drove his knee into his face, but Godfrey blocked the blow by crossing his arms defensively. Unfortunately, he didn't expect Rick's fist. The knee strike brought down his defenses. He also thought that was it, but Rick's fist came from above. There wasn't a break between both moves. He planned to execute both at the same time. His fist struck Godfrey's left eye. Godfrey drew one leg back and pinned it to the floor to stop himself from being sent backwards by that blow. He's bleeding. Isaac gasped as blood trickled down from the torn skin above Godfrey's left eye. Isald pursed her lips. Getting wounded during spars wasn't uncommon, especially when it came to Rick. This was how she built up pain tolerance, although it wasn't enough for her to handle Sylphiette freezing and shattering her legs. She just wanted this spar to end fast. Isald didn't know when she closed her eyes. She didn't want to watch her husband get pummeled. "Are you upset?" Rick asked as he closed in once more. His movement was as swift as it was unique. He swayed from left to right, his body lowered and his fist lifted to his face. A boxing move. Godfrey prepared for him. His eye and body tracked Rick's movement, perfectly catching the feint and adjusting to the main blow, which was coming from the other side. "Got you," Godfrey said inwardly, but Rick suddenly propelled himself upward, hitting Godfrey's arm out of the way and slamming his chin. None of them understood how Rick could move like that. It was completely inhuman. To be able to switch so fast, it took more than skill, but dedicated training of the body not to break under such stressful and abrupt changes of movement. Because normally, this was impossible. Every move could be a fake. Rick wasn't predictable. Seeing Godfrey stagger back, his head tilted skyward, Rick opened his arms. "Is that all? I might as well start a training lesson if this is all you've got." He's taunting him. Godfrey will want to hit back after those blows, and these taunts will make him want to hit back even more, increasing his chances of making a mistake. Snow said. Isald grimaced but refused to look. Godfrey wasn't Rick's first victim. She bit her lower lip, forcing herself to stay quiet and not stop this spar. On the platform, Godfrey touched his lips and sighed. Would he have to use the full strength of mastery? He had gotten more nights since he first gained mastery, making it much stronger. His body was much stronger than a normal human, but how strong? If he wanted to keep up with Rick, he would have to go all out. Every ounce of strength this body had without mana must be unleashed. Godfrey cracked his neck, flexed his arms, and began a stationary jog. At first, it was light and slow, but pressure quickly built up. His feet slammed the floor in order to propel him into the air, and when he landed, the force was sent into the floor once more. Rick's expression changed when cracks appeared on the platform. His eyes grew wider as the cracks spread out, much faster than before. Cracks spread throughout the platform and beyond, like the place had been affected by a tremor. The trembling made Isald unable to take it anymore. They had to stop. She was about to order Rick to stop, but when she opened her eyes, Isald saw why the others were suddenly silent. Frey, her voice trembled. The raw energy emanating from his movement alone was spine-tingling. Neela's mouth hung open. "That can't be a being from this world anymore," she gasped. At that moment, Godfrey opened his eyes and exhaled. His sudden stomp caused an explosion, and he reappeared before Rick, throwing a fierce punch. The punch landed on a humanoid dragon with 4 red eyes and dark red scales. If I did not take on my true form, I might have actually been killed by that blow. To think a man who wasn't using mana would make him switch to his main form. Rick never expected this. Godfrey looked at the butler, who had turned into a bipedal dragon. "I guess the spar is over." Rick gazed at him like he was mad. Couldn't Godfrey see what he had done to the gym, and he expected him to block that blow? "That's a yes then," Godfrey said. Inwardly, he was astounded by the strength mastery gave him. Not even the creator of the skill guessed someone like him would learn it one day. He was definitely strong enough to face a king tier. This was insane. He never knew his body possessed such strength without mana. Upon touching his sweat-covered face, Godfrey sighed. It looked like he would get exhausted much faster without mana. This meant he was really powerful without mana, but his stamina wasn't as monstrous as his strength. "Maybe I'm not strong enough," Snow muttered to himself. Hours later, after the excitement of the spar had settled, the night air was cooler on the lawn outside the mansion. Godfrey, clad in a white long-sleeved top and gray pants, stood on the lawn with Snow and Isaac seated on the ground, panting heavily. "It's enough," he advised. "No, I need to grow," Snow replied defiantly. Godfrey almost face-palmed. Wasn't he the same man saying he was satisfied with being at the origin tier? He was at the limit of his potential. Unless the mana tree saw use in him and decided to make him a player in this new age, Snow would be stuck at the origin tier forever. Isaac rose to his feet, but when Snow tried, he fell back on the grass and lay flat. Seeing Snow had given up, Isaac fell on his butt and also lay flat. "I'm so tired." Godfrey shook his head and sat beside them. "Do you know that I walked out of my family? You all have families, but I can't speak to mine," Snow suddenly said. "I had no idea about that," Isaac said, turning his head toward Snow, who for some reason began to open up. Maybe being with friends and feeling this warmth made him remember his family. "My parents are annoying, to be honest, and they want me to be this perfect, excellent son, but that wasn't me. What they wanted was a monster who sees those weaker as people who should know their place as a less important part of society. I still visit them in disguise, though." Snow sighed heavily. "Apparently, my parents are softening up. Evolution, huh? I think they miss me, but I'm afraid if I go back, they will force me back into that same thing I left behind." "You mean the perfect boy. Maybe you were born to be one, without the looking down on people part," Isaac chipped in. Godfrey entwined his hands behind his head as he lay on the grass, staring at the sky, which had a sparse number of stars. "Isaac might not be wrong. There are a lot of mistakes if you stick to how your parents want you to be, but if you take the good part together with your current ideal, you're the perfect guy. Second only to Percival, of course." "Certainly," Isaac nodded. "I'm better than Percival," Snow sat up. "Yeah, sure," Isaac snickered. That dude barely uttered a word, yet he was one of the most attractive boys in school, and that wasn't his real appearance. He's 10 times more good-looking than the fake everyone in school knew about. Snow clicked his tongue. Even if you're more good-looking, your bad mouth ruins it, Isaac added, forcing Snow to pull out the grass and toss it into his mouth. It made Isaac jerk up, spitting out the sand and grass while glaring at Snow. Snow ignored him and turned to Godfrey. "What do you think I should do about my family? Do you think I should at least meet them? Honestly, it's been a while." "How about tomorrow?" Godfrey answered. He was about to unleash his knights to start clearing dungeons since they were quite rampant, and he also wanted to see them in action. As their king, delegating tasks to his knights was part of his duty. But first, he would accompany Snow to see his family. "Tomorrow," Snow smiled. "I suddenly feel afraid." He looked at his hands. "Is this normal?" 3 individuals sat at a dining table. Orlia, Snow's sister, had eaten earlier but still wanted to eat with her parents, who returned from work late. They worked for the authorities, and the rising number of dungeons made them so busy they barely had enough time for themselves. Agents were in high demand now. Powerful summoners were sought after, as the death rate of summoners had increased. This evolution meant death to some, even fishermen who suddenly discovered gigantic sea creatures that weren't as big before. Dungeons were dangerous, but so were Earth's beasts. Humans outgrew them, but now with this new evolution, they returned stronger, bigger, and more savage than before. Those living in rural areas or exploring forests and mountains before the mana blanket that engulfed the world in darkness were in danger zones, as their summons might not be enough to support them. All these were details she got online and were confirmed by her parents, but today her concern was different. As the family discussed something sensitive this morning, Orlia looked at where her brother usually sat with pursed lips. Her mother saw her and turned to her husband. The man sighed. "We're looking for him. I know he can't kill the Pendragon heiress. Adonis may be too stubborn for his own good, but he won't kill someone. That's not the son I raised. I've been sending mails to Mr. Arthur, and once he approves, I'll be able to meet him." He faced his daughter. "He'll be back soon." Orlia nodded. "He might be extremely disobedient, but he's my son," her father muttered. His wife held his hand, smiling warmly. Just then an incorporeal giant walked through their door. It was so tall it had to bend. This being was over 12 feet, covered from neck to toe in gray bandages, with a massive butcher blade attached to a slim, long handle. It was a frightening 8-foot-long weapon. The handle was covered in bandages. This creature had a gray hood over its head, made from the same bandage cloth. Its face was completely black and hollow like a void, but 2 ghastly white orbs like eyes pierced through, locking on the trio. Black mist left its body and formed a human being. He had white hair that covered his eyes and wore a black robe, his arms crossed. "How weak! Rage doesn't even need his weapon against you," John scowled, then lifted a finger. "If you dare unleash your summons, I'll make sure mine are well fed." Those words made Orlia shiver. A fanatic was at their doorstep, and he was much stronger than them. Had her parents dealt with one of them recently? "Now, if you don't want to die, call Adonis." Orlia turned to her parents, who looked at themselves. "We don't have his number. I'm telling you the truth." The man couldn't finish as rage appeared before him, a fierce gale billowing due to his sudden movement. The dining table was sent backwards, throwing Orlia and her mother to the ground as rage looked into her father's eyes. Before her eyes, it devoured her father's soul, and his hollow shell turned into a solid stone statue. "No!" his wife screamed at the top of her lungs, unleashing a huge crocodile. Rage crushed its head with a stomp, grabbed it, and tossed it through the wall while the woman spat blood and fell to her knees. As Rage approached the woman, Orlia screamed, I'll call him, don't touch her." John looked at her. Orlia looked at her mother, shivered, reached out to her phone and called her brother. She would have called the authorities, but this man would notice and kill her. It was better to call her brother. Snow promised her that he would protect her no matter what. Her big brother would be here, and he would make this fanatic beg for mercy, yet he won't find any. With trembling arms, Orlia called Rowana. The sound of her phone ringing got to Rowana, who was in the bathroom. She was right in the middle of it and didn't bother leaving, so she ignored it. It had to be that weirdo who wouldn't stop pestering her. When the ringing refused to stop, she took a towel and left the bathroom. As she came out, the phone stopped ringing. Rowana picked up her phone, a bit wary at first, but her eyes went wide when she saw several missed calls from Orlia. Coming to the conclusion that she wouldn't pick the call, Orlia sent a message. "Help me." Rowana nearly collapsed. Was there a dungeon outbreak close to their house? Were they under attack? She rushed to the window, looked down and saw the boys. Adonis. All of them looked up. It took quite a while to get to John's house since neither Isald nor Godfrey knew about it. When they got there, Snow saw a few people were already there. The crocodile's corpse announced the situation. Their expressions unsettled Snow's heart. He knew it wouldn't be long before the authorities were here, but he didn't care. Snow rushed into the house and saw his sister, Orlia, on her knees in the sitting room, eyes wide and her hands on her phone as she had turned into stone. Her soul had been devoured. He instinctively tried to change everything with black glimmer, but it didn't work. Snow tried and tried, yet it was useless. Staring at that stone statue that was once his lively sister, Snow felt his world become silent. The sound became mute, the gentle breeze became cold. He turned and saw the broken statues of his parents lying around. Carved into the wall was, "You shouldn't have killed my Isald. You will feel the pain I felt." Orlia, Snow whispered as his knees slammed the floor, tears rolling down his eyes. Wasn't he the one that turned people into stones? Was this our penance? "What do you think I should do about my family? Do you think I should at least meet them? Honestly, it's been a while." His own words came back to him. "Big bro, show me your butterfly." His sister's voice from when they were much younger rang in his ears as he began to sniffle, eyes red and full of tears. "Aren't you tired of white? Is it because you have white hair? Do you want to be like the snow?" Her naive voice rang once more. Snow bent over, his face on the floor as he wept loudly, crying like a child. He couldn't cry silently anymore. The pain was too much. "Snow, why's your sister calling you that? I gave birth to a boy, not a girl." His mother's teasing voice rang. Godfrey froze at the door, his lips slightly parted. Isaac, Lucy, and Rowana were horrified, while Isald gazed at the writing on the wall. "It can't be. It couldn't be him, right?" The writing matched him, but the death of these people was done by summons with abilities. He didn't have. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story. And if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down.